Hey guys, welcome back. So yeah, it's been a minute. Been dealing with some life-related things. I'm sure you all know how it is. But yeah, anyway, I'll get to that stuff later. The main purpose of this video, while I still have you here, is that I wanted to decide on what the next book should be for a few pages. The ongoing Tim Thoughts Book Club. So the first live stream was actually about a month ago. I'd hoped to get a jump on the next book before then, but whatever, here we are. And it went awesome. Special shout out to Sam. Thanks so much for participating. And we got to bounce some ideas off of each other. We got to talk about some interesting themes from the first book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. It was an awesome book, and if you missed out, you can still read the book and check out the replay of the live stream if you're interested. But anyway, this video is all about deciding on what the next book should be. So recently I was in Little Tokyo in LA, and we went to the Kinokuniya bookstore there, and they had a large section of recommended books by prominent Asian authors. And browsing through those books, I was able to grab a few that I thought sounded really interesting, and then another couple books that my wife recommended. And so if you're watching this video, then at the same time that I'm posting this video, I've posted a poll on the community tab of my channel listing the 4 books that I've recommended for the next meeting. So go over there, vote for what book you think would be interesting, what book you want to read, and then also go ahead and leave a comment on this video or in that poll if there's some other book you think that we should all be reading. But anyway, getting back to the 4 books that I think would be interesting, I have read none of these, so if you haven't, then I'm in the same boat as you. No Longer Human, Crying in H Mart, Never Let Me Go, and Pachinko. So as part of this video, let's dive in and read the synopsis of each of these books from Goodreads, and hopefully it will entice you to see which book you'd want to read. I personally think they would all be great choices, and they're all really critically acclaimed and all seem very interesting and obviously well written. So let's jump into it. So the first book is called No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. And this is a classic book written by a Japanese author, first published in 1958. So here's the synopsis. Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human. This leading post-war Japanese writer's second novel tells the poignant and fascinating story of a young man who is caught between the breakup of the traditions of a northern Japanese aristocratic family and the impact of Western ideas. In consequence, he feels himself disqualified from being human, a literal translation of the Japanese title. Donald Keene, who translated this and Dazai's first novel, The Setting Sun, has said of the author's work, his world suggests Chekhov or possibly post-war France, but there is a Japanese sensibility in the choice and presentation of the material. A Dazai novel is at once immediately intelligible in Western terms and quite unlike any Western book. His writing is in some ways reminiscent of Rimbaud, while he himself has often been called a forerunner of Yukio Mishima. So this is a modern classic Japanese novel. It does sound like the subject matter is a little heavy, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. So the next book, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. An unflinching, powerful memoir about growing up Korean American, losing her mother, and forging her own identity. In this exquisite story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Michelle Zauner proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. With humor and heart, she tells of growing up one of the few Asian American kids at her school in Eugene, Oregon, of struggling with her mother's particular high expectations of her, of a painful adolescence, of treasured months spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up, moving to the East Coast for college, finding work in the restaurant industry, and performing gigs with her fledgling band, and meeting the man who would become her husband, her Koreanness began to feel ever more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal cancer when Michelle was 25 that forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gifts of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. Vivacious and plain-spoken, lyrical and honest, Zauner's voice is as radiantly alive on the page as it is on stage, rich with intimate anecdotes that will resonate widely and complete with family photos, Crying in H Mart is a book to cherish, share, and reread. Again, I've only heard good things about this book, and interestingly, the author is also in a band and writes her own songs. So another good candidate. And the third book up is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Hailsham seems like a pleasant English boarding school, far from the influences of the city. Its students are well-tended and supported, trained in art and literature, and become just the sort of people the world wants them to be. But curiously, they are taught nothing of the outside world, and are allowed little contact with it. Within the grounds of Hailsham, Kathy grows from schoolgirl to young woman, but it's only when she and her friends Ruth and Tommy leave the safe grounds of the school, as they always knew they would, that they realize the full truth of what Hailsham is. Never Let Me Go breaks through the boundaries of the literary novel. It is a gripping mystery, a beautiful love story, and also a scathing critique of human arrogance and a moral examination of how we treat the vulnerable and different in our society. In exploring the themes of memory and the impact of the past, Ishiguro takes on the idea of a possible future to create his most moving and powerful book to date. So the author Ishiguro has somewhat recently won a Nobel Prize in Literature, and from what I understand, this is one of his hallmark works, which again, I've never read, but sounds very interesting. So there you have it. And the fourth book, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Before I read the synopsis of this, one thing I wanted to note is that there is a new series coming out on Apple TV based on this novel, which looks phenomenal and stars the grandmother from Minari. Check out my video essay on that if you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, just a cool fun fact, and if we read this book, it could be a really good lead-in to the series if anybody's interested in that. And so on to the synopsis. In the early 1900s, teenage Sunja, the adored daughter of a crippled fisherman, falls for a wealthy stranger at the seashore near her home in Korea. He promises her the world, but when she discovers she is pregnant and that her lover is married, she refuses to be bought. Instead, she accepts an offer of marriage from a gentle, sickly minister passing through on his way to Japan. But her decision to abandon her home and to reject her son's powerful father sets off a dramatic saga that will echo down through the generations. Richly told and profoundly moving, Pachinko is a story of love, sacrifice, ambition, and loyalty. From bustling street markets to the halls of Japan's finest universities, to the pachinko parlors of the criminal underworld. Lee's complex and passionate characters, strong, stubborn women, devoted sisters and sons, fathers shaken by moral crisis, survive and thrive against the indifferent arc of history. And so yeah, it sounds really interesting and compelling, just like the other three books. So again, please do head over to that community page and vote for which book you want to read. Let's meet up for a few pages, part 2, whatever we call it, the second meeting of a few pages. And then once we decide on the book, we can decide when we should have the meeting for the book club. I know everybody has very busy lives, and reading a book is not always the easiest thing to find time for. So we'll work together and figure out, what book we'll read and when we'll meet up for the next meeting of a few pages. But yeah, other than that, I just, wanted to say thank you if you're watching this for, sticking by me and, for checking in and everything like that. I really hope that some more of you join the next meeting of the book club. I really did enjoy the first meeting and had a great time exploring the themes and ideas present in the first book and talking with my new buddy Sam. So yeah, come on by. It was a lot of fun. Vote on what book you think we should read next. The other thing I just wanted to briefly go over was just, a brief little channel update. So, obviously all the holidays went by, then my wife and I went on this whole journey to buy a new car. I posted about that in the community tab, and it's all electric. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. It's a lot safer for her and her commute. So that'll be a bit of a load off of both of our minds. And it was a bit of an ordeal, but I'm glad that we got through it, and we both really love the new car. So other than that, I actually had a medical problem. Ever since August, I'd been dealing with these boils on my skin. I won't get into too many details because it's kind of messy and gross, but long story short, I had a staph infection and was actually on antibiotics for the last 2 weeks, and it has basically completely cleared up. The future will tell on if it comes back or, whatever happens there, but I'm just really glad to put all that in the rearview mirror. It was really sapping a lot of my energy, putting a lot of stress on me. A lot of the time I couldn't even really exercise because it was very painful, and I'm just overall just so glad that that chapter is over, at least hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, what that means though for the channel is, hopefully you guys saw my latest video, the new Forgotten Ghibli about Pompoko, and I just published that last Friday. So it seems like the YouTube algorithm kind of doesn't like it when I don't post for a while, so maybe you weren't notified or maybe you didn't see it pop up on your feed. So be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. And, I'm really glad to be sort of back in the driver's seat, so to speak. I'm just glad to be back, have my energy back, not so stressed out about this crazy infection thing, and I'm just so grateful to have you guys around and all of your comments and all of your likes and all of your support. And I know I'm still a small channel, which is why your support just completely means the world to me. And thank you so much, even though I kind of went on hiatus there for a bit, but I'm back, so let's continue on this journey together. Let's do the next meeting of the book club, go to the poll, vote for your favorite book, get a hold of it, let's read it, let's meet, let's talk about it, and let's continue to grow together. Go on this journey of life and knowledge and whatever else there is to be had in this world. Let's just cherish the connections we have. But yeah, again, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully one of these books piques your interest. If there's any book you have to recommend, leave a comment, go to the poll, leave a comment there. But yeah, finally, I think that's all I had to say. So as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to vote in the poll. See ya.